Senator Organa takes Leia to Alderaan, and Darth Sidious doesn't feel a disturbance in the Force? I mean, seriously, you expect me to believe that he can raise Leia on Alderaan, and the Sith Lords, they're not going to pick up anything. I mean, Kenobi is on Tatooine. He's living right up the street.
And now, I'm going to school kids on just how cool George Luke is.
Dear George Lucas, will your feckless fans build a monument to your masterpiece and slay the maker with their scorn?
George Lucas fingered my late adolescence.
I love-hate George Lucas. I love-hate him hard, you know? There was a day where he was a scruffy nerf herder from Tatooine, if you will. You know, he was one of us.
There is something about our love for Star Wars that is different from our love for other things.
It's funny that this can make people angry, that these movies can make people angry, but it does make you angry.
It's the most important thing in the world to me. Like, don't ever say it's just a film. It's not just a film.
Without good old GL, we wouldn't have any of this. Or this.
I think there was something creatively inspiring about the Star Wars universe that children of the 70s wanted to not just watch it and enjoy it, but actually make it.
What he's got there is something very powerful, something that really touches people and propels people to want to bring about changes in their world.
I mean, there are just these essential building blocks to who I am now that are Star Wars. I mean, they're branded. George Lucas's trademark is on these little elements of my life.
Sitting in the room upstairs, watching her wind up the buns in her hair.
I remember sometime in my late teen years realizing in a little popping epiphany that Star Wars had created my entire moral universe.
The most remarkable thing about Star Wars, if you go stand in a lineup on one of those opening days, in that lineup you're gonna have screenwriters, directors, composers, visual effects artists. You're also gonna have physicists, astrologers and astronomers, linguists, people from all walks of life doing everything they're doing. And they'll say, Star Wars inspired me to do this. That guy and his work unlocked a generation's imagination.
George Lucas, the man who created Star Wars, the story that has changed the world. A man of 1,000 imaginations and ideas, George has achieved in 20 years more than most would in a lifetime. A shy, retiring individual, George Lucas is a simple man who, like the rest of us, enjoys the finer things in life. But inside that quiet exterior is a man who has brought tears of joy and sorrow to so many millions of people across the planet.
I grew up in a small town, Central California. I was kind of a underachiever, typical kid who got into a fair amount of trouble. My father said, well, he'll be a late bloomer. He always used to say that. I've always been very into building things. My teenage years, they were completely devoted to cars. I was a terrible student in high school, so I was at this sort of crossroads. I was in an accident that, in theory, no one could survive. So it was like, well, I'm here, and every day now is an extra day. And so for the first time, I think I sat down during that summer and did a lot of meditating on my future and what I was here for. I got very excited about anthropology and about social sciences and psychology, and I was able to push my photography even further and eventually discovered film.
Could you tell something about your young assistant, George Lucas?
Oh, he's not my assistant, actually.
I like cinema verite documentaries. I like non-story, non-character tone poems that were being done in San Francisco at that time. And that's the filmmaking that I was interested in.
Most of my first student films were very technically oriented. You know, they were mostly visual exercises. And the first Sex was really a visual exercise. Just now I'm beginning to get into saying things.
Here you've got someone filled with all this promise coming out of USC, and then you get smacked down so hard from the system.
Feelings hurt is putting it mildly. I think there was this feeling of personal outrage.
It's a fact of kind of resentment, I guess, that everyone feels when one finds that somebody who has the money or as a result of the money, has the power, they can make like aesthetic, directorial, writing decisions, which they have really no business making.
In order to get my vision out there, I've really got to learn how to manipulate the system, because the system is designed really to tear you down and destroy everything that you're doing and push it off to the side.
He, for some reason, was so traumatized by his experiences with Universal on American Graffiti, with Warner Brothers on THX, that these became defining moments for him.
I was fortunate there was one guy in the film business back when. He said, you know, I don't understand your films. I don't understand your script, but I think you're a talented guy and I'm going to invest in you.
Who was that?
That was Alan Ladd Jr. at Fox, and that's how I got Star Wars made.
These films represent to him not just what he can achieve technologically, but he sees these as breakthrough films for the industry. He's interested in a larger agenda, which is transforming the way movies are made.
Everybody who looked at A New Hope thought he was crazy. It's a very personal film for him. And people were telling him left and right what a doofus he was. Turns around, everybody's wrong. It's the biggest thing ever.
Hollywood, California, August 1977. A triumphant moment in screen history. As the two heroes of Star Wars make their indelible impressions on the ground reserved for Movieland's legends, the world resounds with the fact that Star Wars itself has become a full-fledged social phenomenon.
I found the invite to the first preview of Star Wars. I remember when the title first came up, went up, disappeared, which was quite impressive. And then when that spaceship came in over the top, the audience went wild.
When you see Star Wars just goes through the screen and the music starts up, that's the best. Because once that's like, you're just like, yes, come on, like, and then...
We've all got a movie like that that grabs us as a kid and just shakes the innards.
George Lucas was everything to me because he was this God, the great creator.
Boom, 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 boom.
The man is a certifiable genius.
He kind of took no and turned it into a very big yes.
You can't overestimate just how important that first Star Wars movie was. The whole world was blown away.
I remember getting a phone call from, of all people, my mother, who had been in America, and phoning up to tell me there was this thing called Star Wars.
Yo me acuerdo todavía, fíjate, si me acordaré, que me acuerdo que era un día muy lluvioso en el antiguo Cine Ópera de Madrid. Después vino lo que todos imaginaréis. Me quedé prendado.
I actually saw Star Wars with my grandmother. The transition between the end of the first Star Wars movie and the parking lot in the, West Covina, that was got to be one of the most jarring transitions I've ever experienced, of something like being born.
1977, that was lightning in a bottle. You had a perfect storm of just social, economic pressure forcing people to go to a theater and escape for 2 hours, and you gave them a product and a story that was great.
While our faith in the old religions of our parents was dying, he gave us a new mythos to understand ourselves and our world.
It's like touching on something universal and sublime about just the human experience.
It's tough to put George Lucas on a level with Shakespeare and with Homer right now, but you know what? It's not about the author, it's about the culture that embraces it. It's about what that author evoked.
He's a genius, and I can prove it because he did Star Wars.
Part of the genius of Star Wars and of George Lucas was really understanding how to market it.
He had already achieved, accidentally, a level of expectations that he couldn't meet because they simply couldn't make the toys fast enough to get them out. So they said, well, why don't we sell an empty box with a certificate in it where we'll mail you the toys once they're done.
One of the reasons why we have such fond memories of those movies are the toys. We care as much about the toys as we care about the movies.
I still remember the smell of those action figures, opening it up and just smelling it. Oh.
I don't have any other thing in print that has the unique smell of this. I'm serious.
If you wanted to wear Star Wars pajamas, you could get them. If you wanted to have a ray gun just like Han Solo, you could get it. It was like being let loose in a candy store.
I am your father.
Because I'm Anakin.
I'm Anakin.
Star Wars becomes participatory culture the moment in which a kid playing with an action figure begins to make up their own story.
Fans who are doing all of this, participating, they're really contributing to this world. They want to contribute to this world that they sense is bigger than this frame.
The world he created is so much fun to play in.
You give us a huge, enormous sandbox to play in, and here we are playing.
It kind of encapsulates you and like pulls you in.
George has been the one filmmaker that has encouraged everybody to play in his sandbox. He allowed people like myself to openly mock and create things.
Most people would call this the ass end of space, but I like the small town feeling you get around here.
There's fan films, and then there's really Star Wars fan films. Probably the next biggest franchise would be Doctor Who fan films. And easily, there's probably 100 Star Wars fan films for every one Doctor Who.
Now, what I love are the action figure films and the Lego films. They're taking that merchandise and they're using it as a toolkit to create their own media.
I started making my first animation films when I was in high school. I would take the Star Wars figures and adjust them 2 frames at a time. And it took a long time, but I was stuck in my basement, and that was my obsession.
I think when people want to recreate something, especially Star Wars, first thing I think of is parody. It's because people love it, and it's easy to tease.
Darth Vader, only you could be so bold. The Imperial Senate will not distill for this.
It is possible, however unlikely, that they may find a weakness and exploit
The
it.
plans that you refer to will soon be back in our hands.
What if we took Star Wars and just split it up and somehow got people to work on it together? That'd be really funny. That's the first thing I thought. It'd be really hilarious. I'll take Star Wars Episode 4 and I'll split up in 473 15-second pieces. Within 3 days, all the scenes were taken, all 473. I was like, oh crap. This is working. The amount of creativity that's gone into this project is just astounding. A lot of it's amateur, that's my favorite, but there's also high quality animation, stop motion photography. We can recreate the scene with a clever way and still keep to the original spirit. I think that's a lot more unique and interesting.
It's not wise to upset a Wookiee. But sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid. That's because a droid don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
I see your point, sir.
I suggest
You know, I don't know what it is that draws Star Wars fans to actually make their own versions of Star Wars. I mean, some of these fan films are like very serious and going off on tangents of, you know, their own Star Wars characters.
Some of them are wildly subversive in what they find to do with Star Wars.
I'm never going to get out of here. Is there anything I might do to help?
Who will survive the evil of the Ewoks? Butchered, degraded, cooked. Don't go in the Underwoods.
They are turning the franchise on its head, using the Master's toys to do it.
Whatever he created has obviously sparked something in other people to need to create.
There's a lot of things I enjoy, but it doesn't make me want to do it. You know, I love Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, but I never entertained the idea of becoming, you know, a candy maker.
It really became a jumping off point for whether you wanted to make movies or write fiction. I'm sure there's probably Star Wars needlepoint out there. People just find their own thing that they like, and then they find a way somehow to adapt Star Wars to it.
Long time ago, far, far away.
Kiss a Wookiee,
time ago,
kick a droid,
far away.
fly the Falcon through an asteroid till the princess is annoyed.
July of 1981, I was 10 years old and was coming off of a big Star Wars, I was a big, huge Star Wars fan. I was very excited about Raiders, so I went to the theater with my dad, and literally in that first viewing, it just sort of blew me away. It just split my brain completely in half, and I wanted nothing more than to inhabit the role of Indiana Jones. It was really out of just role-playing, just, be in a fantasy, and took it a little farther than most. We had no idea that it would take us 7 years to do our little recreation, but we stuck to it.
They were recreating the scene where Indiana Jones meets Marion. And by the end of the scene, the Nazi bad guys have come in, they've had this huge gunfight, the whole place is in flames and falling around them. And it's really great in the original movie. When you watch their version, it takes on even more tension because you're hoping, God, please let these kids get out of this thing alive. They basically just got these big mason jars full of isopropyl alcohol because they'd read in a magic book that if you set it on fire, it would burn for a moment and then it would extinguish itself and it wouldn't actually leave any markings. And they set the whole basement up in flames. In the real movie, one of the guys winds up, up in flames, so they're like, well, we have to do that. The director took it upon himself, wrapped himself up in a raincoat, which he said on it was fire retardant, so he figured, oh, great, I'm going to be perfectly safe. And then at the last minute, he decided, well, forget the alcohol, let's just use gasoline. It is, without question, the best fan film ever made. I mean, there are ones that are technically better, there's ones with better acting and better effects, but you'd be really hard-pressed to find anything with more heart and just unabashed love for what they're paying tribute to.
In theater number 1, the main Chinese auditorium, we're presenting Star Wars, the new edition.
When I first finished Star Wars and everybody said, well, gee, this is fantastic, it's great, what do you think about it? I said, well, it didn't really turn out that well, I'm not really happy with it.
The most obvious thing that's happened is we've gone back to the original negative, cleaned it up considerably, redone a lot of the optical effects, the wipes, the dissolves, and improved the quality of the film because it was deteriorating. One of the things I wanted to do was preserve the film so that it could be still a viable piece of entertainment in the 21st century.
This is only about an artist going back to do a film and make it in the way in which he originally envisioned it.
We were all on board. We were absolutely on board. I could not have been more excited.
When the trailer was released on the internet, it ground my office to a halt because there were 60 people all downloading the same little, postage-sized trailer just so they could see that one shot of the X-Wings going by on their way to the Death Star.
When I watched it, I realized, oh, it's different. And then I realized, it's his vision, and I have to respect that because of the auteur theory, because I was taught in film school, but there's this other version that,
What he wanted to do was make it what his initial vision was. What he didn't realize, there's a shitload of people out there who really liked his unfinished final product.
I think anytime you try and improve on anything that becomes that much of a cultural touchstone, you're only going to make it worse. Even if you make it better, you're still only going to make it worse because people, they take ownership of it and they don't want it fucked with.
George Lucas took away your sandbox. He took away your coloring book and said, no, it belongs to me again, and I'm going to continue to rewrite my stories. I'm going to do a very fan thing to do, which is, the special editions are fan films. He's a fan of his own film, and we feel like he didn't do it right.
Looking specifically at the episode 4 changes, there are the tweaks that are just small timing tweaks, like moving the 20th Century Fox logo 20 frames earlier, moving the initial hit of Star Wars with the music 2 frames. Then the next types of changes you have are internal trims to restore sequences.
The changes are dramatic. I'm trying to think of something where the changes are dramatic that might have caused some debate. Oh yeah, the Bible.
So to be like, all of a sudden they're like, you know what, there's a chapter 5.5 of Genesis, and it turns out that they actually, here's some new stuff that happened in creation you never knew about.
I've added the Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo, which was a scene that had been cut out due to time and money constraints, and once I finished the third film, I really wanted to go back and put that back in there.
It was stupid.
It was a little... It was cool that he was there because I have a definite connection with this beast. But he was more menacing in Jedi. I mean, he was this mafia godfather boss who knocked your ass down into a hole, and that beast came out and ate you. And he was like comical.
When he stands on his tail. Tedious.
The scene was originally shot with an actor playing Jabba the Hutt to stand in for whatever creature we designed. It was going to cost way too much money and take too much time to do it. And I figured, I didn't know whether I was ever going to get to make the other movies.
From a dramatic point of view, the scene is totally unnecessary. We had technical difficulty shooting that scene originally, and that character was going to be a human being. And we shot it 3 different times, and we had camera problems and other damage to the negative and things, so we abandoned it. But in that process, we put all the information in that scene into the Greedo scene in the cantina.
Matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss. Tell Jabba that I've got his money.
The next type of changes are changes that I think are made probably more because George is a different film director than he was in the mid-70s.
When I saw the first Star Wars growing up in Derry, when Greedo confronts Han in the cantina, Han pulls his pistol right out of the holster and without any warning fires through the table and hits Greedo in the chest, and Greedo dies.
Yes, I bet you have.
Then you did the special editions, and Greedo shoots first and misses from 2 feet away.
Yes, I bet you have.
I stood up right in the middle of that theater and I shouted, Greedo never shot first! The only gun that's fired belongs to Cock-a-Doodle Han!
Did Han shoot first?
Yes.
Period.
Period.
J'étais là, j'avais 7 ans, je m'en souviens très bien, Han Solo a tiré le premier.
That complicates a situation that isn't even complicated in the first place. And in addition to that, Greedo misses! He misses at close range.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
What's the point of sending like a bounty hunter assassin who can't shoot from like 3 feet away? He can like spat on him.
Fanboys hate
I
that.
grew up with those
Han
movies.
Solo fired first!
Yeah, that was
Han Solo
ridiculous.
And when we do it in the trilogy, Han Solo fires first, and the
there's
fans go crazy.
Huge reaction off of that.
Crazy.
Yes, I bet you have.
Who shot first?
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
You gotta admit, it's what's called super nerd nitpicking over something that's not really that important.
It's not geeky nitpicking. When you go into the heart of a character and you do something which changes that character's dynamic, that's not nitpicking, that's destroying story. That's betrayal.
To people who like Star Wars, that is like England losing on penalties against Germany. It's that disappointing. It's like,
I feel like Pinocchio being manipulated by the strings of a crazy, power-mad digital puppeteer.
how can you not have Han shoot first? And still just ignore the fact that he and Chewie are running drugs back and forth across the universe.
Even as a child, I understood that this was the kind of man that Han Solo was. He was dangerous.
So yes, it's a small change, but it's a change that is informing the whole character.
Better her than me.
I don't know what the impulse is to go back and take a character and put this lacquer on it, this sort of like varnish to change the intention.
She's rich.
That's the part that they didn't tell us about when they told us how cool the special editions were going to be. You know, the parts they told us about were, you know, we're going to dress up the special effects. We're going to do, you know, neat things with the explosions. It's also going to lie to us about these characters. It's going to take the edge off of Star Wars and make it a safer, dumber place.
There are things that George in the 70s I don't think was shying away from because he was taking the point of view as it's action and it's fun. But now, as a parent or maybe as an older filmmaker, he's looking at it saying, wow, that's really brutal.
You can't do that. You can't do that. Martin Scorsese's making The Departed. It's like, well, maybe I'll have a few less deaths at the end because I have an 8-year-old child. It's like, serious? Are you serious?
When the name of your saga is Star Wars, there's pretty much two things you have to include in the saga. One of which is stars, and the other which is wars.
Did you hear that? People here to strike for sure. Me too.
What the hell are you doing?
He went from, being one filmmaker who just did it his way, he was a maverick, to now all of a sudden, rethinking everything and second-guessing himself and deciding that his stuff was maybe too hard-edged. But I can't ask you to condemn a man already condemned to servitude, either to technology or his relentless need to keep tinkering with his art.
Well, if Da Vinci were able to jump in a DeLorean and go through time and appear today and then tell everyone, on the Mona Lisa, I didn't have the mouth quite right. Well, let me go and repaint some of this. They're not going to let him.
Sometimes you have to say the work is finished. It now belongs to the ages.
If it ain't broke, George. If it ain't broke.
Art is never finished. It's just abandoned. And, however, it's abandoned and then shown. And those things, with their flaws, are what affect people.
If Jackson Pollock came back later and said, you know what, there's a boot print there, and I dropped my cigarette there, let me pull that out, we'd be like, no, the cigarette is the key part of the painting. He's like, no, I dropped my cigarette. You just thought it was a key part of the painting for 40 years.
If you go back, say, to the Middle Ages or to the 1500s, 1600s, artists did. We know, thanks to X-ray technology, we can look what's behind the painting and we can find there was another painting that's slightly different. So in a way, artists have always changed their works.
Film is a product of its time and conditions. All of the conditions that we had in 1977, the constraints of money, the constraints of time, and everything else, created that original film.
L'histoire du cinéma est faite de milliers de films qu'on connaît sous une version que leurs cinéastes auraient peut-être aimé remanier. Mais ils l'ont pas fait, et tant mieux au fond.
It really bothered me that this was being done, or certainly being done, with an utter disdain for the original release of the movies that meant so much to us, and also the original filmmakers.
George Lucas may be the brainchild behind Star Wars. He may have come up with the story and a lot of the characters, but everyone who participated in making those films had some type of creative input. I mean, they won an Oscar for Best Special Effects. Some of those effects are stripped out and replaced with CGI enhancements, if you want to call them that. I think that that's really disrespectful to the people who worked on those models and did those shots.
Is the version of Star Wars Episode 4 the version that won the Academy Award for Best Editing? I would say maybe not.
I'm very sorry you all fell in love with a half-completed film, but I want it to be the way I want it to be.
George Lucas is trying to revisit history, rewrite history.
He's almost like a Holocaust denier, but he's a Star Wars denier. It's like, this never existed. Don't worry about that.
It's an awful thing to say to somebody who grew up loving something.
Once we saw the original films as they were originally presented theatrically, and they were presented to us and imprinted on our minds, that was it.
It hurts. It physically hurts you. It's like you're being force-fed someone else's memories instead of your own.
Singin' in the Rain. Digitally remastered and restored in widescreen by George Lucas himself.
Audiences want to be able to see the original versions that created the emotional impact for them. By taking away that choice, it's something that I think is a bit of a slap in the face to the fans of George Lucas.
With all due respect to Mr. Lucas, it's not just your dream. It's not just your fantasy. It's a universe that we all live in now.
This is an interesting question. Does the public have the right to the materials of its own culture? And I would say yes.
I think that once you put it out there, you
Because I know
really
what,
are.
think about it. You're putting your stuff out there. Is it yours or is it everyone else's? I think it's shared.
I like to make the analogy of the shirt that you actually own. And Star Wars is that shirt for George Lucas. He actually owns this shirt. And he can do with it whatever he wishes. Now, the thing is...
But it's a dick thing to do.
You gotta respect the fans a little bit. I mean, this is the same people that bought an empty cardboard box from Kenner in '77.
It's just irresponsible. Because what you're like, I've built this fucking empire on all of you people who have your billions of dollars, and your reward is bite me.
On a certain level, that places an undue burden on any artist. Who can cope with the fact that all of a sudden everyone feels they own your art?
En fin, gracias a Lucas, el VHS sigue vivo y aún guardo mi grabación de la tele, de la película original. La tengo guardada ahí para poder revisarla de vez en cuando y poder ver el material original.
Sur cet énorme coffret Laserdisc, vous avez ce qui est probablement les versions les plus propres des Star Wars dits d'origine, ceux sortis entre 77 et 83, non retouchés. Et donc, en se basant sur ces Laserdiscs, certains fans ont créé des DVD qu'ils ont proposés gratuitement sur la toile en téléchargement. Donc il s'agit bien sûr de quelque chose d'illégal, mais d'un point de vue moral, ces types ont contribué à la préservation du patrimoine.
I started this site called Original Trilogy, and the whole point of the site was to provide a gathering place for people who were unhappy, and that's where the idea of the petition came from. Within the first 24 hours, we had like 10,000 signatures, and over the coming months, it made it up to about, I think it was 78,000 confirmed signatures. This comes from the PR department at Lucasfilm. We hope that releasing those original movies on a bonus disc, original is in quotes, by the way, as if they're not really the originals. It's just something we made up. The negatives of the movies were permanently altered for the creation of the special editions, and existing prints of the first versions are in poor condition. Since these movies do not represent George's artistic vision, well, we were just told that they didn't even exist anymore. It's not even possible. Why even fall back on the whole artistic vision argument? We want you to be aware that we have no plans, now or in the future, to restore the earlier versions.
He's saying that basically the original negative now no longer exists because of this restoration. But how could that be? Because he must have translated the film to digital, and then he must have worked on his new special effects with the digital version, and then that new digital version would be translated back into film. So you've got the film is now the new version, okay, but then you've still got the original film that you started out with.
Nobody actually physically cuts a negative. An archival, you dupe the negative, and then you make the changes from that. So I find it very hard to believe they've actually physically destroyed the negative of the film. And if they did, I mean, that is just
heinous.
You can never see the original again. That's what Lucasfilm is claiming, but it's probably not true.
J'ai le souvenir qu'à la fin des années 80, début 90, il y avait un monsieur qui était parti en croisade contre Turner, qui voulait colorier les films. Et ce cinéaste disait que les films en noir et blanc représentaient la mémoire de l'humanité et qu'on ne pouvait pas impunément y toucher. Ce cinéphile s'appelait George Lucas.
Well, see, I've never heard that. Then I just want to say fuck him all the way.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't colorize your old movies, but I'm going to completely change mine, and that's just the way it is. I mean, that's
okay
obscene.
because I wanted to.
That's
yeah.
obscene.
You yourself led the campaign against the colorization of films. You understand why films shouldn't be changed?
That's different. These are my movies.
I think an argument could be made that once a film is in the National Film Registry, it belongs to everyone. It belongs to all Americans because it's so important culturally to the United States.
So when you say indiscriminately, we're going to change it and we're going to make it better and it's going to evolve with the times, and it's like carving, Bill Clinton on Mount Rushmore.
He definitely has a responsibility to film history. Can you get Congress to say, look, you got to hand that over to the Smithsonian now? Probably not, but it would be awesome if it happened.
Mr. Lucas, please just release them, okay?
At least make them available to people.
Please, please, please give us the original film forever.
Just give us the original.
Even if he only released that in the 70-disc box set where you have to buy all 70 discs, like every version with the Clone Wars, fine, I'll buy it, sell the rest of that garbage on eBay, and keep the 3 fucking discs that I want. That's fine.
Steven Spielberg put out an edition of E.T. It's a double disc set. He digitally changed some stuff, and the original version of E.T. is also in that.
Think Blade Runner exists in 5 different versions. Brazil exists in 3 different versions. Terry Gilliam embraces those various versions. When Criterion put out their box set, it includes every version, including the one that he hated and had nothing to do with.
And what better way for Lucas to demonstrate his confidence in the changes he's made? Putting both of them on the same disc and saying, here, watch one right after the other. Compare the two. I think this one's better.
It has nothing to do with creativity. It's to do with marketing and business and sales of home videos and, relicensing on television and all the rest of it.
When I went to film school, I swore to my father, who was a businessman, that I would never, ever, ever be a businessman.
Star Wars, became so successful that it kind of took over my life in terms of it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
To have created something, I think, so popular, so incredibly successful, must be a very, very heavy load.
Sometimes I wish I never made Star Wars.
The great success of Star Wars didn't lead to the independence and the personal filmmaking. George never made another film after that. Instead, he became, a producer and an entrepreneur.
It was kind of the worst thing that happened to George Lucas in a way. He could have happily made a career making some dramas, some documentaries, some avant-garde stuff, and instead he's kind of been turned into this big corporate entity.
He became someone who was fighting the establishment and became the establishment almost overnight. It's arguable that that the success of Star Wars destroyed George Lucas as a filmmaker.
We were deprived of those films that he was going to make and might have made. And instead we have an enormous, kind of industrial marketing complex.
When a franchise becomes so successful, it's plugged into a great machine.
Return of the Jedi was the beginning. Merchandising raised its ugly head, and then the whole thing became super commercial from then onwards.
It feels like at some point the storyteller went away and the businessman took over.
All the ancillary things of Star Wars I don't think are true to the rebellious nature of the Rebel Alliance going against the big beast.
I can't reconcile the two Georges. It's almost a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, because I have so much admiration for him, and at the same time, I don't know why the lessons that he's espousing he doesn't recognize in the mirror.
I have so much respect for the guy, though, because business-wise, he built a brand that you cannot break.
He's a brilliant marketeer. He's like the evil genius of marketing.
I think of myself as a filmmaker, and I got into an argument once at a film conference with George Cukor, who's really doesn't like the word filmmaker. I mean, he likens it to toy maker. I like being thought of as a toy maker that makes films.
The merchandise is insane.
I mean, even in Spaceballs, they make fun of it. When Mel Brooks
Spaceballs,
is
the lunchbox. Spaceballs, the toilet paper.
I mean, I'm wearing Star Wars underpants, for God's sake, you know.
We're basically Oliver going, please, sir, may I have some more? And instead of George Lucas saying no, he's going, yeah, I've got a whole vat of porridge.
I can't imagine the landfills that after this generation passes on, the legacy we're going to leave is lots of plastic, and I'm partially responsible.
You have to admit that that's just global capitalism and global consumerism. That's not, I mean, George Lucas didn't invent that. He found himself in a weird relationship with it. And as a result, like all of us found ourselves in a weird relationship with it through him.
I will buy just about anything that says Star Wars on it. That's a contract, okay? It's like, you put something out of quality, we'll buy it. We're gonna assume it's quality if it says Star Wars on it. But that's not happening anymore.
They just keep throwing so much stuff at you. You only have so much space and you only have so much money.
George Lucas, what could I say? The man has ruined my life. Took my husband away, took my son away, and consumed every doll that I've ever had that I could never save. Every toy in this room that you see behind me is a chip away at my heart for the last 30 years.
I think I'll really release a box set and sell it for way too much and not let people know that it would be cheaper to buy each individually. that would be pretty fun.
I purchased it on VHS probably 3 or 4 times. I bought the box set, you know. This is the latest box set, and I bought it like an idiot. This one because it has From Star Wars to Jedi included with it, and then the next one because it was remastered so that it got rid of some of the imperfections. And then I bought it again because it was widescreen, and then I bought it again because it was a special edition. I don't know why I did that one, but...
It's like he's wanked us off. He's given us a really good hand job. We've come, and now he's going, come on, there's more in there. There's more in there. And we're going, just leave it alone. Leave it. I just want to sleep now.
The whole thing of I'm being exploited, I mean, come on, seriously, dude. Someone provides a product, you choose to buy it. If you want to view it or if you want to own it, it has nothing to do with the person who made it. They made it because they thought there might be a market for it. In this case, they're right.
If fans feel like they have to buy everything George puts out, like they feel obligated to do that, it's like chasing the dragon with heroin addicts.
You can say someone got you addicted to drugs. At the end of the day, you stuck the freaking needle in your arm.
いや、そういう人はたくさんいると思うな。でも僕はだいぶそれは卒業したんですけど、もう今はR2D2 のものしか買わないってもう決めたんですけど。
We'd love to live in a world where we don't buy anything, but realistically we don't. And at the end of the day, we love the stuff we buy. So you add that on to the resentments that Star Wars fans increasingly have toward George Lucas, and you have a particularly tortured relationship to merchandise.
Oh, God. You know, you think it would be easy to walk away from this. See, now I feel like I'm in therapy talking about this. Hi, my name is Chris.
The fans kept it alive with the toys and the stories and the speculation on whether there would be more Star Wars adventures, what they would be. You know, you had Caravan of Courage, but that doesn't really count.
You basically just want more of it. And when there isn't any of it around, you basically go and create it yourself, really.
From 83 onwards until Phantom Menace, there was nothing except fan works.
It was the fans who kept that saga alive with the expanded universe and the video games. People wanted more. He called A New Hope Episode 4, so he set himself up.
Today is my first day of writing the new Star Wars series. Nice fresh blocks of pencils. I'm all set. All I need is an idea.
I mean, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for them to make episodes 1, 2, and 3 since I was, 14 years old when the last one came out. When they announced they're finally going to come out, the first thought that went through my head is that this is going to be the greatest thing to come down the pike ever. Like everyone's going to want to see this movie. This is going to be like a giant generation-defining moment.
Every single Star Wars fan out there created their movie, created the movie right away in their head.
Yeah.
The second thought I had was, oh my God, everyone's going to hate it. There's no way that they won't hate it because they're so emotionally invested in the first one.
I remember the day they announced the name and the Phantom Menace hit the airwaves and everybody went,
what does that mean?
What the fuck does that mean?
Starting Friday, thousands of theaters around the country began showing a new 2-minute trailer for what can possibly be described as the most eagerly awaited new movie of the decade.
2 words, Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars!
Star Wars. Star Wars. Star Wars. Movie fans lined up
Just to see the trailer.
The Hollywood Reporter says at LA's Mann's Chinese Theater, attendance shot up 1,100% the night they ran a sneak preview of this Star Wars trailer.
No, I think I might leave after the trailer, though. I don't know.
You actually paid to go in to see a movie just to see the trailer, and then you left?
Yes. Because it's an awesome 2.5 minutes.
That was incredible. There was nothing, ever, anything like that.
Oh my God! I welled up. I mean, I haven't welled up in years.
I just had a heart attack. I think God must be ashamed as a creator. Once he saw the preview for this movie and realized he hasn't made something this good.
This is going to be something I'll remember and tell my children. It's wonderful. I know, I sound crazy.
It was like a Beatles concert. It was like when Obi-Wan Kenobi meet Anakin Skywalker, and you thought like the world was going to end. Like, my God, if the world ends, I hope I'm still alive by May 19th to see this, because I can't believe this is going to happen.
There was never anything more hyped up than Episode 1.
No.
In the history of
Even Jesus was less hyped.
You just may have noticed that Star Wars, the latest episode, opens nationally at midnight tonight.
Some 2.2 million Americans from New York to LA are expected to skip work today just to be among the first viewers of the new Star Wars prequel.
Steve, we're here outside Mann's Chinese Theater, and people are revved up.
I've come all the way from Australia and lining up here for 1,000 hours.
I'm here from London. We're from Switzerland.
Came here from Poland.
It's like a historical event for this generation.
What are you going to do if the movie really sucks?
Probably see it again. I can't see any way that it could suck. There's just no way the movie could suck. Don't see that.
There's no way it's going to suck.
Well, it could suck.
It could not suck. How could it suck?
Once the opening scroll starts, I'm going to be in ecstasy. There's going to be people crying here, you know?
53 minutes and counting until the Phantom Menace.
Star Wars! We're going to see Star Wars!
I was there, like everybody else was, in May of '99, waiting in line, lightsaber in hand, midnight show.
I saw that movie in San Francisco with ILM.
I was seeing it in a place in Madison, Wisconsin called the Orpheum. It was a huge theater. It had 1,700 seats, I believe, and it was absolutely full.
Everybody's in there. The air is electric.
They're practically, throwing their hats in the air, jumping up and down. People are just crazy with excitement.
And then the lights went down and everybody cheered, and the previews came on and they booed, and the Lucasfilm logo came up and everybody cheered again.
The hair stands up on your neck as soon as you see a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. As soon as it comes up on the screen.
The opening scroll, and everyone's freaking out.
And it's like, this is incredible. I mean, whoever thought this day was going to come?
And that was one of the great moments of anybody's movie-going life.
Then the movie starts.
Already I knew. It's like just the language of the crawl was wrong. It just didn't feel right. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay with it,
It went from this glow up here in your heart, and then it descended, and then it went down, and then it just sat here, right?
And I just remember, thinking, oh my God, is it really this? Is it actually this bad?
It just felt like being slapped in the face with a wet fish.
It was like, what? This could suck?
I'm starting to deflate a little bit, but, I'm still with Star Wars. It's going to, okay, Jedi's not great, but, whatever. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
What I was used to seeing, from watching the originals in theaters were people cheering, there's big applause moments, big laughs. This was literally an almost like silent screening.
Maybe it was something different. Maybe we didn't see that. Maybe this is a Star Wars film that we need to watch again.
That was the first time in my life that a movie has ever properly disappointed me and gutted me to the point where I had to lie about my feelings to save face.
I mean, I even remember interviews on the local news, and they're all saying, yeah, but we're going back again tomorrow. There was still a hope, and I don't think it really sunk in for everybody until they saw it that second time, because everybody saw it a second time. We all saw it again.
Did I wait 4 days in the rain, peeing into my own hand and drinking it to get Phantom Menace tickets for the third time? Yes, I did.
It's like abuse victims returning to their site of their abuse and in order to conquer it somehow.
I went to over and over, but not like having fun, but more like just trying to convince myself that I was having fun.
I saw Phantom Menace in the theater 13 times. Part of that was me not being able to see a Star Wars film for 17 years. Part of it was coming to terms with what it was.
Just sitting there the second time through it and just realizing it's not growing on me. That was a bummer, dude. That was a fucking bummer.
It all started in line 4, episode 1, with my girlfriend's hair all done up in buns. But it turns out the movie wasn't quite what I'd hoped to see. Tell me what you want.
Star Wars just didn't, I think, take care of the people who loved it so much.
Is this the best you could do? 18 years, man.
We're not so ready to separate the way we see things now and the way we saw things then and the way that we see things based on how we saw things then.
When The Phantom Menace came out, that's when I noticed a real shift in fans from being like fans and they really admired George Lucas to taking it so personally that George Lucas actually wrote a movie to piss them off.
Yeah. Who there loved the prequel movies? You're wrong.
We all knew Palpatine was going to be the Emperor. We all knew Anakin Skywalker was going to be Darth Vader, but we never expected it to be like this.
In my Star Wars universe, the numbers 1, 2, and 3 don't exist.
George Lucas talked about making prequels, but they never made it past screenplays before he died on the Van Wyck Expressway in a fiery car crash in 1989. Right after making The Last Crusade.
Brandon, wanting something very badly doesn't make it true. These people just made it seem like it was the worst movie ever. It didn't matter to me. I still saw it in the theater about 13 or 14 times.
There's actually like a fan appreciation site of the new trilogy, which is pretty funny. There's like a group of people that are like, no, we really like the new movies.
We really want to like it. We really do.
I mean, I guess he has license to do anything he wants, but I think he disappointed a generation of fans. I'd say that. Me being one of them.
Fans know exactly what they want. Fans want more of the last thing they read and they liked. That's what fans want. They liked that thing you did. They would like another one of those, please.
I don't think there's any responsibility to audience at all. I think there's none. I think you got to just do what you want to do. You got to do stuff that you like. For me, if the comic strip doesn't make me laugh, or if I don't like it, then I won't print it. But I'm not going to take advice from anybody.
His responsibility to the fans is to take their money.
I've got real bad news for us fans. We're old. We're paunchy. Ain't gonna be like Star Wars in 1977 that summer.
But what I tried to do to myself is just say, okay, let me remind myself, it's just a big, dumb movie about space wizards. That's what it's supposed to be. So as long as it's got space wizards in it, I'm gonna be happy. But, that turned out to be harder than I thought because of Jar Jar.
Jar Jar is a key to all this. If we get Jar Jar working, because he's a funnier character than we've ever had in any of the movies before.
Your Honor, I have digitally generated my own lawyer through the magic of CGI.
Notice how seamlessly he's integrated into this live-action courtroom. Amazing. I call him Puddles McPoo-Poo.
You had a beautiful balloon, Star Wars balloon, and everyone loves a balloon. And then he brings Jar Jar Binks along, which is a big needle, and just pops that balloon.
Not now, woohoo!
Jar Jar Binks. What kind of a name is that for a space freak?
You are a crazy-ass son of a bitch. You are a no-good bastard. You are full of bullshit. You can pick her up and kiss my ass goodbye. Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks.
Squeeze.
You are a crazy jackass.
Doesn't like you.
You
That's
are
okay.
a stupid asshole.
Nobody likes him.
You are an evil asshole. You are a stupid low-life fool.
How's it feel, Jar Jar?
Jar Jar Binks.
You want to dance now?
Jar Jar Binks.
In A New Hope, you have this very organic flow of humor going through all the characters, more or less. And here, they're all like a bunch of poker face gits. And the person who's supposed to be funny is the least funny thing in the history of least funny things.
It's a cartoon character invading this world that I was taking seriously, up to that point.
My heart sank when he started talking. I was like, oh, it's that kind of movie.
He had taken us to this level, and then he was like, okay, we're gonna go back to kind of child potty humor, and we're gonna have some weird animal fart in our face and say Piusa. And you're gonna laugh, right? Because you like Beavis and Butthead.
Jar Jar Binks is what someone with no sense of humor thinks humor is. He talks funny, he walks funny, he's got the speech impediment. That's funny, right?
Some people said it was almost like the racist stereotypes in a 30s comedy where you would have, Stephen Fetchner or Manton Moreland come out, Feats, do your stuff.
He was like the hip-hop version of C-3PO.
The difficulty with that, though, is that if Jar Jar Binks is racist because he looks like blackface entertainment, but nobody's seen blackface entertainment who's 12 years old watching the Star Wars prequels, does a racist character whose racism is so coded in history remain a racist character?
The shittiest part about Jar Jar is that Jar Jar exists. We can't fight it. If you're a Star Wars fan, in your heart, you know that Jar Jar Binks not only is in the films, but an integral part of the films. Jar Jar Binks is one of the linchpins of the entire saga.
Misa propose that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
He's the deciding vote on giving the Emperor a bunch of power. So you know that Lucas is like, fuck you.
But thanks, George, for taking him out of the second movie, or at least only including him for 5 minutes. We appreciate that. He does listen sometimes.
But that one shot in episode 2 where Jar Jar first comes in, has that little meeting with, Anakin and everyone, and then he comes and he looks at the camera and kind of smiles. As if to say, hey, I'm still around, guys. I know you hate me, but I'm not going anywhere. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you actually trying to antagonize us?
I like the bullishness in him that makes him persist with the character, and that he will put them in episode 2, he'll keep with him in episode 3, and he won't give in to what the fans want. I think he thinks he's absolutely sticking to his guns.
I had 3PO really railing on Jar Jar, and I got notes back to tone it down at first. Then I heard notes came back from George saying, no, 3PO should be harder on Jar Jar. He should treat him like the fans do.
Étant quelqu'un qui adore le burlesque et qui adore le mélange des genres, voir dans le même plan le sérieux de la force et l'appétit d'un Gungan qui ne peut pas ne pas manger une pomme, ça me plaît beaucoup. Et je trouve ça réussi, parce que l'un ne détruit pas l'autre.
Finalement, moi, Jar Jar Binks, je le vois plutôt comme un personnage qui prouve que Lucas a encore des choses à nous montrer, des choses à essayer, et pas tant un personnage exagéré. C'est un essai, c'est une tentative, et c'est une volonté de spectaculaire supplémentaire.
The problem with Jar Jar Binks isn't the character. It's with you older fanboys who have forgotten what it's like to be kids.
Kids like Jar Jar. Why? What about the Ewoks? Hey? They were rubbish. You don't complain about them. Yeah, but Jar Jar Binks makes the Ewoks look like fucking Shaft.
Kids like Jar Jar Binks, man,
Exactly.
have to dress up as that friggin' thing and go to birthday parties.
I think people your age hate Jar Jar Binks because he's one of the new characters. He is one of the new characters, actually.
What do you guys think of Jar Jar?
Jar Jar Binks, yeah.
I think he's really funny. I also like the name.
Does your dad disagree with you?
See?
I don't like him as much as you.
You have sweeter taste, I think, when you're a child, don't you? You have more saccharine kind of outlook on life. But so maybe Jar Jar is a work of genius. Who knows?
You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you. This jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you?
My friend who has a 7-year-old son, he loves Star Wars, but to him, it's all Star Wars, you know? Episodes 1 through 6, plus the Clone Wars, plus the video games. Whatever Lucas was doing right by us, kind of seems like he's still doing right by kids today.
Which one do you like of the film?
Me? I like that one.
Yeah.
But the films can't fight each other, can they?
He is purposefully condescending because he's making these movies for kids. He's said that numerous times. Yes. George has said, these movies are for children. I make them for children. Well, maybe. And when we love the original trilogy, we were children.
Is the onus on George or on us? Should we as adults be understanding of what he's doing as a filmmaker, or should he have made films for an aging audience that enjoyed the first?
I think that saying that it's made for kids and that I could, that's why I couldn't get it is bullshit.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether he genuinely believes that or he just got caught with his pants down and needed a rationale for it.
If he was making it for kids, do kids really care about trade federation and tariffs and taxes and Senate meetings and blah, 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 blah?
I was trying to explain to my 5-year-old son, the trade embargo, blah, 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 blah.
And you just lose him.
Yeah.
One word summarizes everything that was wrong and how he took a big FU to the entire fan base. Midichlorians.
Midichlorians.
Exactly.
Tell me about midichlorians.
Midichlorians. That's my other favorite thing.
Midichlorians.
And the Force? Well, that's just microscopic bacteria in your bloodstream called midichlorians.
Look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm out.
When Obi-Wan Kenobi first introduces what the Force is, he describes it as an energy field that binds the galaxy together. Everyone in the audience knows he's talking about a psychic field. He's talking about a spiritual thing.
That's a lovely idea, a beautiful notion. Then to kind of reduce it to this kind of biological determinant.
That takes this thing, the Force, that is supposed to be tied to your sense of spirituality and your moral code, and takes it from that into like some crap that you got from your mom and dad, like a bunch of nonsense.
That's sort of like, painting the face of God, isn't it?
You have the midichlorians, you don't. You will never be a Jedi no matter how hard you try. Oh, thanks, George.
Every one of us who grew up with the original series has had that moment where you've sat at home in your bedroom and you don't admit it, and you've tried to levitate something with the power of your mind.
It's an accessible thing then. It wasn't yet this mutant, ubermensch, demigod thing.
It became a measurable thing. It's like saying, hey, look at how much religion you have. Look at how much spirit and faith you've got.
But the idea of the Force, the idea of...
It's ruined.
No, it's... How is
yes,
it ruined?
Is.
What is the essential teachings of the Force? To live without fear, to live without anger, right? To do good for yourself and everybody else, to be open, right?
My blood test says I can't do that.
That's bullshit.
It's like Scientologists and their thetans.
No, stop it. Don't bring the Scientologists into this.
You can't be preoccupied with what other people think. Like Star Wars, for instance, is my story. Just like my house is, my house. So if I want to paint my house green, even if everyone else thinks it should be red, guess what? I'm going to paint it Jar Jar.
I think the reason that the original Star Wars movies, or at least A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, are so great is because they were really made in collaboration with other people. Once George decided to approach the prequels and really do it in a vacuum, I don't think that is the best way for an artist to function.
He's beyond a certain level of criticism now. He's beyond the idea of true collaboration. And this is all about some interior channeling of these stories he's held in his mind now for way too long.
I did have a very strong feeling about being able to be in control of my work and not having people tamper with it.
The only reason it's fun is because I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have anybody telling me what to do. That's what I've earned.
If you got a whole movie-making empire to help you make movies, like what good is it if it's not at least able to give you a little bit of feedback?
I think he took something wonderful and in an effort to maintain control over it while at the same time capitalizing on it, I think he broke it.
Yeah, he's like an overprotective parent, and by doing that he's retarded his child. And that's annoying because he had a brilliant child.
It's a very big day for you. Now hold on while I set it up.
Set what up?
Your new studio, silly. So you can keep writing Star Wars.
What?
You're going to rewrite episode 3, George. But this time, you're going to do it correctly. You're going to make it the way I want to see it.
Et à l'époque, il a été très très vexé, blessé même, que THX 138 ou American Graffiti ait été remonté par les studios. Et il s'est juré que plus jamais ça lui arriverait, parce que désormais, il aurait le contrôle sur ses films. Et en 1999, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Ce n'est plus les studios qui remontent ses films, c'est son public. Et ce public remonte ses films avec les outils que Lucas leur a offerts.
This is probably one of the better ones. It's credited as episode 1.11. This version is about 70 minutes, and a much better movie. But I love how it's credited here. It says, "See what should have been," and then there's a graphic of a Band-Aid.
It's hard to read most of the fan edits as anything other than a direct criticism of the creative decisions that George Lucas made. So these probably cut deepest in George Lucas.
Wie könnte ich so viel Zeit, Energie, ja Lust reinbringen, wenn mich die ganze Sache nicht berühren würde?
My motivation for redoing The Phantom Menace, quite frankly, was because I thought the movie was absolute ass. In the original Star Wars, there were no fart jokes. Nobody stepped in CGI doo-doo. In my fan edit, you won't find mentions of midichlorians. You know, that's not part of my Star Wars.
Pour mon Silent Star Wars, mon but était de réduire au maximum la longueur de chaque épisode pour avoir 2 films, un pour chaque trilogie. Pour la version Dusty de mon édition, j'ai recadré l'ensemble, plan par plan, en 4/3. J'ai passé le débit en 18 images par seconde. J'ai également ajouté des teintes de couleurs selon les planètes où l'action se passe, selon l'humeur de la scène.
So a fandom is born out of a mix of fascination and frustration, and the fan edit is its clearest embodiment. It's now an art form in and of itself, but it is an art form that dare not raise its head. It's an art form that exists in the shadows.
You've got this small extreme of fans that threatening me, said I shouldn't touch Star Wars, it's not my film to touch, how dare I do this? But the scary thing was when I started receiving death threats from a few fans. If you don't like my version, don't watch it. Watch the original.
I don't have any problem at all with fan edits, fan remixes.
Spielball der Mächte.
It's an absolutely legitimate and really cool response to the art.
I told you kids to slow down.
But I also don't believe that any of those fans has the right to go and knock on my door and say, I don't like this character, I want you to take him out of your book. Because it's like, no, I got to make this. This came out of my head. Leave me alone.
How do you feel, Lord Vader? Where is Padme? Is she all right? Is she safe? I'm afraid in your anger, you killed her.
For God's sake, George, you have got to fix the ending where Vader says, "No!" This is a crucial scene, George, and you fucked it up. How are you going to unfuck this? I think it would be better if Vader is just standing there, you know, growling at the top of his voice like, and then maybe you can have some sparks coming out of his throat as his brand new, you know, voice, you know, box thing starts breaking on him. That would be so much more effective. It would
People will continue to want to put their fingerprints on the things that they love and to fix the things about the things they love that they hate. Did that make sense?
Everyone knows that our culture is going to become more participatory. What's at stake are the terms of our participation. that Lucas and Lucasfilm were going to have to cede more control to the fans if they're going to survive and remain valuable as media properties. Take Alice in Wonderland. Within the first 20 years after Alice in Wonderland was published, there were more than 200 commercially published books that took out Wonderland or its characters and expanded them in new directions. And literary critics believe that's probably why Wonderland, after the Bible and Shakespeare, is still the most quoted work in the English language, that Lewis Carroll embraced the transformation of his story.
He's the biggest proponent of the fans. Has he gone after anybody for doing a fan film? Absolutely not. He's actually, oh my God, he holds a contest for you. He makes library sounds available to you.
Lucas has been, I think, far more gracious to his fans than his fans perhaps have been tolerant of Lucas.
We want the authors of our texts to be dead and for us to have complete control over them and them not to tell us what to do with it anymore. We like the idea that there are these sort of magical characters who create amazing things and then leave them to us to go find our own way home.
This thing that he made, whatever his intentions were, it's definitely not, he's not in control of it anymore.
It's kind of like fighting the ultimate uphill battle. The fans are never going to win about that.
I think we will have to pry Star Wars out of George Lucas's cold, dead hands.
You want your Star Wars? Eat it!
People don't know that my middle name is actually W. So
Yeah.
I am the other GW.
Right.
And I am more than the decider. I'm the creator.
You are the creator.
I am the George with a capital G.
I see.
Yes.
I think from the point of view of control, it belongs to George Lucas. He controls how the fans are going to see it, under what conditions they're going to see it, and they have to accept that.
He's very controlling of his image. He made one fatal error, and he's done everything in his power to erase that, and that was the Star Wars Christmas special.
The Star Wars Holiday Special.
The story goes that for many years he denied it ever happened.
When Lucas does occasionally acknowledge that it exists, he generally says, if I could track down every copy and smash it with a hammer, I would.
It is the single worst piece of television ever to be put together. The grand conceit of the Star Wars Holiday Special is that Chewbacca needs to return to his home planet of Kashyyyk for Life Day, which is the Wookiee planetary holiday.
Happy Life Day, pal.
At least 20 minutes of the 2-hour special occurs within Chewbacca's household in Wookiee language with no subtitles.
What were they smoking? People were tuned in to watch just growling, a half hour of characters growling at each other. It's surreal.
The grandfather of the clan, Itchy, puts on some sort of headgear and is able to see a hologram of Diane Carroll singing to him. It's essentially a kind of galactic pornography.
Oh, we are excited, aren't we?
How many people have seen the Star Wars Christmas special? In some cultures, it's a war crime.
He very quickly realized that this was damaging to the Lucas image and to the Star Wars brand, and so he's tried to excise that from history, not quite successfully.
So here's my legally obtained, perfectly legitimate copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special. If it happens to look like a VHS rip shoddily encoded to an internet format, just a trick of the lens.
It is part of Star Wars history. This is like the Holy Grail. This is finding Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster.
It's like finding your mom and dad's sex tape.
It should just exist as a cultural touchstone for the 70s. It belongs in a museum.
Christmas of 2008, it was announced that the Paley Center, which is a museum dedicated to television history, they were doing an online poll as to what people's favorite Christmas special was. And they were going to screen the top 5 winners. And they had, Charlie Brown Christmas, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty, all that. Star Wars Christmas Special ran away with it. When I saw the poll, I thought, even if this wins, there's no way Lucas will let it be screened. And it turned out to be yet another bootleg with the commercials intact.
The Star Wars Holiday Special creates a tension for Lucas in that if he is to be the all-controlling, all-encompassing, all-knowing creator of the universe who then lets things run out of his control, it indicates that he's not all-knowing, all-controlling, all-encompassing.
Everyone geeks out for one thing. Will there be an end to geeking out for Star Wars? Gee, I don't know, man. How long can you run a cheese grater along your face and still like it?
I never saw episode 3.
He never saw it. He actually felt burned enough to not see episode 3.
So I think it's possible to break the chain. I stopped completely. I burned all my toys. Shit, I didn't have any toys.
But if you did,
I would have burned them.
I don't like these anymore. I especially don't like the Droid Wars.
What George Lucas did to a lot of what I enjoyed was horrible.
One of the worst things that a nerd can do, if I can use the word nerd, is when they love something so much that in order to continue to be more into it than the next person, they have to hate it.
You think this movie couldn't get, so fucking bad, but it just gets worse and fucking worse.
George, you must own up to your mistake.
George, you need to take a long fucking walk off a short fucking pier at the moment because your movies are the worst piece of shit I have ever seen. You used to be so good.
And their nerd love kind of eats its own tail like a snake eating its own tail, and all of the sort of love that was motivating that nerd to want to go on the internet and talk about Star Wars has now turned in on itself, and they're like Sith Lords, They now are just consumed with hatred of Star Wars. That's how you can tell they're Star Wars fans, is that they hate Star Wars so much.
I go out of my way for you. I watch your movies, I buy your toys, I even burned my copy of the holiday special just to make you happy. And what thanks do I get?
Do Star Wars fans need to get over things? Not necessarily. I mean, they're not professionals.
Au Festival de Cannes, lorsqu'ils ont diffusé le dernier Indiana Jones, à la fin de la séance, un spectateur s'est écrié « George, you've got to stop hurting us ». C'est intéressant de voir que c'est pas Spielberg qui a été cité. Le type a immédiatement pensé à George Lucas.
Indiana Jones survives a fucking nuclear blast in a fridge. There are people swinging from vines like fucking Tarzan, and there are fucking aliens. What the fuck?
They did an episode of South Park where, the boys are kind of talking ambiguously about this rape that's occurred in town, and they're really emotional and upset.
Look, what happened, happened. We can't change it now. We have to move on. Move on! Our friend was raped, Stan!
And as an audience member, you're wondering, who got raped? And then, bam.
Well, Indiana Jones. You're looking nice.
Lucas and Spielberg graphically raping Indiana Jones. It's very Deliverance.
いや、アメリカってすごいなと思いましたよ。日本じゃ考えられないなって。
I took a couple of my animators, the animators from South Park, we went to go see it. We all felt like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were treating us like we were idiots, like we were stupid. Why would you do that to Indiana Jones?
The South Park episode, I think, really had more of an impact on the Indy fans than Indy 4. I think that was their closure.
We felt the same way as the boys did. We're like, we really haven't talked about it since it happened.
What does George think about the South Park episode? George, what do you think about it? It doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? What do you think that says?
Whenever I think of George Lucas, I think of Captain EO. Whenever I think of Captain EO, I think of Michael Jackson. So whenever I think of Michael Jackson, I think of Disneyland. So then, whenever I think of Michael Jackson and I think of George Lucas, and I think of Captain EO, and I think of Disneyland, I think of my childhood. Then all of a sudden I go into this weird place where it's George Lucas, my childhood self, and Michael Jackson. Oh my God.
I was at a convention and I saw some guys selling a t-shirt that actually did say George Lucas raped my childhood.
Isn't there a song, George Raped My Childhood?
George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood.
No one raped my childhood, least of all George Lucas. And quite frankly, if some metaphorical version of George Lucas wanted to have sexual congress with some metaphorical version of my childhood, it would be the most beautiful, consensual of lovemaking.
I don't think you can say George Lucas ruined my childhood Because you're still living in your childhood. You're acting like a child.
It took away what childhood? Did you buy the toys? Did you have fun? Were you inspired? Shut up.
It's not like he's taking those characters and doing terrible things with them. Well, it kind of is, though.
We were asking for it in a way. It's like, why were we dressed like that in that part of town at that time of night if we weren't looking for some trouble? And in George's mind, he gave us what we wanted. He gave us new Star Wars. We never said we wanted good Star Wars. We just said we wanted Star Wars.
You could say like George Lucas is a seducer.
I'd say like Battered Wife is probably a better example. We keep getting beaten by Bad Dad, but keep going back to Bad Dad to get beaten some more.
Come with me.
How did he ruin your childhood?
Because it's sloppy storytelling. When I was in the theater, I really felt like, fuck, there goes my childhood.
That was exciting.
I'm going to step away from accusing the man of lying to himself or cheating any of us or, pillaging the playgrounds of our mind or anything like that. But only because I've made fun of him in my comic strip and I don't want him to sue me.
I think we're giving him such a hard time because the franchise of Star Wars stands for something.
It was the thing that we hearken back to as being most pure in regards to our cinematic experience. It's the foundation.
There's no villain in this story. It's better for us as geeks to have a suit to blame for things. But when we don't have a suit to blame and we realize, oh, George is the suit. He's also the creative guy and he's the... it's a lot of conflicting feelings.
Lucas's own career is like the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. I can't have been the first person to say that.
I was sort of fighting the corporate system, which I didn't like, and I'm not happy with the fact that corporations have taken over the film industry. But now I found myself being the head of a corporation. So there's a certain irony there, is that I have become the very thing that I was trying to avoid. That is Darth Vader. He becomes the very thing that he's trying to protect himself against.
You can absolutely look at the Star Wars movies as autobiographical.
There are clearly a lot of these parallels in the very first Star Wars movie, with Luke Skywalker being sort of the lonely adolescent kid who yearns to get out of his Culver City of a planet.
Maybe George Lucas has had that nightmare where he goes into the tree and he sees like the version of himself, like Luke saw the version of himself that had turned into Vader. Here's a reality check, George. You did become that guy. For a lot of geeks, you did become the version of Luke in the tree that is in Vader's mask.
I wonder if his son is going to kill him and then make his ghost say sorry.
I will say one thing about George Lucas. Regardless of his weaknesses as a filmmaker, he deserves respect because he's a towering giant in the history of cinema.
So I think maybe we made him feel like he couldn't really make anything but Star Wars.
Paramount wants another franchise film from him. The distributors of Star Wars, they want another Star Wars films. There's a lot of pressure on George Lucas to make these because they're business ventures.
I'm holding out that he's still got something in him and he could make another American Graffiti, another THX, another Star Wars.
No way.
I think he could. But he's got to get out of Star Wars. He's got to jump out of it.
I think George is a big, bloated billionaire that still has the soul of an idealistic hippie. And inside that idealistic hippie is an alienated kid who used to go out to the garage and work on motors when he felt like he didn't fit in. And then all that is inserted inside a giant Death Star-like corporation that grew up around him. And I suppose all of those four versions of him are battling it out. And I'm rooting for the little kid in the middle. I hope that he eventually comes out and makes some more movies.
No matter how many billions of dollars Star Wars could earn, and no matter how valuable that franchise that they call is, it isn't worth a tenth of what he's worth as an artist and what he's capable of doing.
Warum bin ich hier in diesem Steinbruch? Was gibt mir George Lucas ganz persönlich? Das ist ganz einfach und das ist das Wichtigste. Inspiration.
He inspired me to get on YouTube, do my thing, and be pretty dang good at what I'm doing.
なんか夢の塊の人かなってちょっと
人物とかではないんですけど、彼は常にこう夢を考え続けている人なのかな。なのでもっともっと夢をいっぱい考えて私たちに夢を与えていただきたいなって思います。
ジョージ・ルーカス監督、あと「スター・ウォーズ」というものが自分の中では空気のようなもので、なくては死んでしまう。
All the fans are still right there with him. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the world of fandom is that we're pretty forgiving people.
Look, he gave us hours and hours of enjoyment.
100%. That has been a lifetime of enjoyment.
I saw George Lucas, I'd give him a big hug and say thank you.
At the end of the day, he's a human being. He's a human being who's placed in an extraordinary circumstance.
You know what, when we get down to it, none of us have any huge right to complain about 3 movies we don't like, because he gave us those 3 movies that we love forever. Did we pay too much to go see those 3 movies? I have something really better to do at 4 in the morning, opening night of episode 2? No. Could have stayed home and played some Star Wars video games.
This conversation will never go away. When we're in retirement homes arguing about things, we'll be having a conversation about what went wrong with The Phantom Menace, why didn't it work, what about that Jar Jar Binks?
Because that's the thing. The hatred's coupled with such love of some of the things he's done, you know? You can't fight it. I still want new Star Wars.
We're the first civilization in all of human history that made fun important. And gosh, by that fundamental moral standard, George Lucas is a freaking saint.
We love you, George. Yeah, we love you. Yeah, it's like, that's where it all comes out. It's like, we love you. We love you, Uncle George.
I got him! Breakage! Don't get coffee!
Dear George Lucas, you should celebrate. 'Cause I just saw Revenge of the Sith and it was really great. But then I heard a rumor, you're calling it a night. Ain't gonna be no more Star Wars movies, that just can't be right. Well, I know you're tired, I'm sure you need a break. But you can't end the story now, there's just too much at stake. So I'm gonna help you, we'll keep this thing alive. I'll pick up right where you left off for Star Wars 3.5. 'Cause there's another story to tell for the Jedi and the Sith. I can hardly wait. 'Cause Star Wars 3.5, it's gonna take the cake. Dear George Lucas, you made a pretty good start. But it's not where the story ends, so I wrote the next part.
Reich und geheimnisvoll, Berge aus purem Gold, bei ihm zu Haus. Lukas, doch woher kommt sein Geld und der Wunsch nach der Welt, das wird hier erzählt. Star Wars, damit nimmt er viel ein, irgendwie schon gemein, diese Betrügerei. Lukas, Lukas, der ist famos, denn er lässt niemals los, wenn er dich hat. Ich meine, hey, 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 das sind Kinder. Und der George Lucas, der nimmt sie aus. Er sagt nur, hey, 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 diese Kinder. Lässt sie weiter, da kommt noch Geld raus. 1, 2, 3, 4, Lukas, Lukas. Will der Schatten an der Wand. Lukas hat die Macht im Land und der ganzen Welt. Hey, Lukas, Lukas. Steven Pittman gerade im Schoß. Lukas legt erst richtig los. Ha, 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 ha. Hey, Lukas, Lukas. Hansen schlägt er ins Gesicht, bis dieser zusammenbricht. George ist Nummer 1. Hey, Lukas, Lukas. James spielt er an die Wand. Dessen Frau ist abgebrannt. Wer war da wohl schuld? Lukas, Schöpfer der Star Wars Welt. Damit macht er viel Geld, was mir sehr missfällt. Lukas, denn er hat einen Plan, wie er uns irgendwann beherrschen kann. Ich meine, hey, 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 das sind Kinder und der George Lucas schlachtet sie aus. Er sagt nur, hey, 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 diese Kinder, immer weiter, da kommt noch Geld raus. 1, 2, 3, 4, Lukas, 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 der macht Wookies halt, das macht 100 Jahre alt, denn er trinkt ihr Blut. Hey, Lukas, Lukas, Eva, Phil und THX, Lukas gibt noch viel mehr Tricks. Ha, 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 hey!
All right, let me do this with as few words as possible. Oops, I didn't know. I didn't know either. Blech. Blech. Okay, I'm over it. Want to get some coffee? Yeah, I could get some coffee. Let's go get some coffee.